Many people, specifically men, love swordsmen. They play them in games, they watch them in films, and they admire them in stories. But very few people want to do what it actually takes to become one. So let me tell you a story from my cringe past. Around 5 years ago, I was a huge gamer basically, and I played a lot of games who had swordsmen as the main protagonist, as the playable characters, right? Such as Witcher, such as Assassin's Creed. But one of my most favorite ones, which was actually a multiplayer one, was called For Honor. It's still a running game, somewhat. It has like, I think, already 10 years. Anyways, the story is that whenever I had the free time after school, or even when I didn't have free time, when it was already time for me to go to bed, I didn't went to bed because I wanted to actually free myself from the things that were surrounding me, such as studies and constant stress, right? That's why I just escaped from my life into the artificial world. So I played a lot of For Honor, right? Where you can fight or play specifically as knights, Vikings, or samurai. So of course I played as knights and samurai. I didn't really play Vikings at all. And so basically I loved this game. One of my favorite characters, playable character inside of it, was Warden, or mostly because of his just simple character, if that makes sense. So him being a basic character who wields a longsword. I think in this specific game I have the most hours spent out of any game whatsoever. And so the story is that whenever I had the time, I played this game until midnight and sometimes even until 3 a.m. I'm not even kidding. If it was weekend and I didn't have any studies or like college the next day, I just played it nearly all night long because I wanted to actually escape from my real world. I still fantasized about wielding a longsword, right? Don't get me wrong, but I found the bad way of actually coping with it. Instead of actually improving, I just came back to grinding inside of For Honor. And so it brings to my first point, which is the fantasy of identity. So in my case, and probably in your case, our modern life borrows cheaply the identity of being a swordsman. You can feel like an epic warrior because you're playing a video game and you're knowing how to fight inside of the video game. You can also feel intellectual through also watching YouTube videos about sword fighting and just getting more knowledge about the historical context, right, of sword fighting. And you can feel like an adventurer through just watching this content, right? And you can feel like strong and disciplined man through watching motivational videos on YouTube or on Instagram, right? But you're actually none of those things. You're not really becoming any of these things specifically. So you get the emotional reward without actually doing anything tangible, without the actual cost of training sword fighting. So for me it's longsword, right? Feeling the anxiety, feeling like stressed out when fighting, feeling tired after many countless of drills and sweating like hell. So the modern way of just feeling like a swordsman is dangerous. Like you should really be honest with yourself in this case, right? Not with me, but with your own self. Because all of these things just fantasy. It feels like enough for you. You're not actually a swordsman if you don't practice the actual art. My next point is why the swordsman archetype is so powerful. People are drawn to swordsmen for a specific reason. Because what does a real swordsman represent? He represents courage, he represents strength, he represents resilience in the face of fear. He represents motivation and he represents just pure grit, even when everything just crumbles around him. So specifically, it's calm under pressure and it's being free out of any limiting beliefs. So it's actually you being in dangerous situation with controlled mastery. And that's why the actually earned competence is what every man wants to get, wants to be as a swordsman. That's why any man, when he sees a sword, at least for just a second, you need to be honest with yourself. At least for a second, you thought about wielding that blade, right? It takes training and it takes courage to actually understand how to do it properly, right? It takes real time and real training, not just feeling like a swordsman through watching videos. That's why the swordsman archetype is timeless. But all of these traits that I've told you, they are not just costumes. It's not just LARPing. All of them are what you can forge in your own self to become a swordsman. That's why my next point is about playing a swordsman versus actually becoming one. So when you play as a swordsman, so inside of the video game, or you watch movies, or you fantasize, right? It's all about aesthetics. It's all about the epic vibe of feeling like a master with a blade, like Musashi, right? Like Miyamoto Musashi in Vagabond, or like Guts in Berserk, or any sort of other fighter or like warrior in his own story. It's about watching cool edits or montages of these characters, right? It also presents itself through you quoting their words to feel like some kind of philosopher, to feel somewhat intellectual. And that all because you try to imagine yourself as this type of man. But actually becoming one, so becoming a real swordsman, takes what you really don't have. It's you showing up even when you're tired. It's you drilling consistently. It's you getting hit in sword fight. I already told you all of these things, right? But you still try to cope with yourself through the artificial things, right? Such as playing as a swordsman in a fucking video game. It's so bizarre to me that you don't really want to take that leap of faith, just like in Assassin's Creed, in an actual reality to learning sword fighting. You just cope that you're not good enough. That's why you're just going back to the artificial worlds. So the one is a complete fantasy. So you trying to play as a swordsman, it's just fantasy. It's just your brain trying to cope with the fact that you're not a swordsman, at least yet, right? That's the thing that you can actually change if you have the actual commitment. Why most people actually stay in fantasy? Because fantasy is comfortable. It's the most comfort thing that you actually can do for your brain and for your body as well, right? Because you don't need to move yourself physically when you're tapping your mouse and keyboard trying to fight off an enemy in your video game. It's having fantasy identity, it's having fun, it's having a blast, a huge blast for the duration of the game or a movie. It's actually giving you dopamine for not doing anything tangible. So it's your way to protect your ego, but your reality, so the real progress, gives you awkwardness, it gives you fear, it gives you also strength, it gives you courage in the face of fear. That's basically what is courage. It's also having pain from getting hit or getting tired, and most of all, it's having real humility to actually learn something. Most people don't choose fantasy because they're just lazy. Probably they are, but that's not just about that. They choose it because it actually protects them in a way. Sword training destroys your illusion. So once you really start training the sword and actually start sparring, not just swinging your sword mindlessly, but you actually get a friend or recruit a sparring partner and you actually test your mettle, your posture matters, your strength matters, your agility also matters. Your footwork is one of the most important things in an actual sword fight. That's why your nerves matter. That's why your discipline also matters here. And also, it's your timing, right? Because without timing, you can't really hit your opponent. So in a real world, you can't cosplay composure under real pressure. When someone actually pressures you into making a mistake that he can exploit himself. So you can't roleplay skill under stress. That's why it matters, and that's why I love it, because it separates people. It separates just lazy dorks who want to stay at the level of just imagining or having the identity of a swordsman instead of actually becoming one. So your skill with a blade reveals what fantasy cannot do. And that's why the story that I told you at the beginning of the video is such an important thing, because you related to it, right? Because it's not just me sticking to video games or watching content about sword fighting. Like, you are probably on the same level as me around like at least a few years ago, right? When I didn't have anything going on for me, I wanted to run away from my actual life. But you need the actual positivity in your life. What I mean by that is that you actually need courage in the face of fear, and you actually need discipline to progress with the real skill. such as sword fighting, right? It's very philosophical, I know, and probably it's very motivational for you. That's why you also watch these videos, I suppose. But you need that drive, like you need that inner drive to push through the anxiety, to push through feeling tired, to push through everything else that holds you back. You need to just cut all of these ties, such as fantasizing all about it and actually doing the tangible practice, actually putting in the work, even if it's just 5 or 15 minutes a day. It's everything matters here. Everything matters. You can just spend hours upon hours on playing a video game, and after ending the gaming session, you don't feel fulfillment. Like, you probably relate to it. You probably spend, at least some of you, right? Not all of you, but I know the guys who are actually on the deeper side of the spectrum of spending 5 up to 6 hours a day in a fucking video game, trying to grind it. And when they actually end their gaming session, they feel even worse before they actually start. They feel unfulfilled because they just like actually lost 6 hours of their life in a fucking artificial world, probably just grinding by themselves, like spending time with, I know, with a girlfriend, playing some kind of social game for just 1 hour, right? To just be social, right? It's a social event. So to come back to the whole sword fighting context, this is why I respect the sword training so much. This is why I respect martial artists. This is why I respect guys who are going consistently to the gym to build their physique up, because it's not all about having everything inside of your head. It's about actually being the thing that you want to be. It gets really deep, man. Like, trust me. If you cannot become someone who you want to be, then you're basically no one. You can protect your ego all you want, but if you don't actually put in the work to change yourself, to become a better version of yourself, then what's the point? That's why I don't care what image you have of yourself. If you can't, or you couldn't really show your skill in a real world through the actual like tangible things, or such as winning an exchange, then I don't care about it. So I don't really care what image you have of yourself. If you freeze in a sparring matches, it shows what you are. If you're loving swords, but then you realize training is hard, then who are you? And that's why you should discover that building confidence takes time. It takes courage. It must be built rather than just acquired through changing your mindset. Sword fighting replaces imagination with reality. So ask yourself honestly, do you want to play as a swordsman, or do you wish to become one? Because one requires nothing, the other requires change. That's why in the modern world you can wear any sort of identity that you want, but only the real effort lets you actually earn one. So if you like this video and you want to actually learn how to sword fight from the very beginning, then join my free school community, the link's in the description or the first pinned comment, where I actually tell you from the very beginning what drills you need to do and what gear you should also get, without spending a fortune on the full hema gear that I own right now. But I earned the skill to already commit more funds into my training, right? At the beginning, you don't need all of this. You just need constant practice. You just need proper guidance. And consider supporting me through the Vanguard group, which is the membership group of this channel. Join that group to actually get your nickname showed at the end of each of my videos. And remember to subscribe to this channel, leave a comment, and just like if you thought it was cool. So yeah. And remember, always take the initiative.